In today's talk, we're going to explore why doing Ashtanga in the morning is more than just doing a few poses. It's also a very effective way to become a more creative person, and it gives you a structured way to come up with ideas, to clarify your thoughts around a specific topic, and allow that idea, that topic to really develop while you're holding a pose. And to be completely honest with you, every single time that I've tried to do one of these sessions, it's come out of this exact method that I'm about to teach you. And since we all have busy minds and stilling our mind and reaching that state of kaivalya is completely out of reach for most of us, at least what we can do with the thoughts that are coming up is to reduce the quantity and improve the quality. And by improve the quality, I mean just towards something that you've been thinking about, mulling over, trying to figure out. And so even though I'm supposed to teach you like 3 tips to forward fold or how to back bend effectively, we all know by now that yoga is so much more than physical exercise. And for me, at least, it's become a very reliable method to discipline my thoughts and to think clearly. And this is why I think there's a usefulness to the Ashtanga method, much more than following an instructor or doing like a lead class in a vinyasa power style yoga class. Because its usefulness actually goes beyond the mat into becoming a more creative person. And that's what we're going to try and explore today. Because at its core, Ashtanga has a set sequence of postures. And this means that after a while, once you learn the positions, you don't have to think, oh my gosh, what comes next? What do I have to do next? It's just like your body's memory begins to take over and your mind is like free. And often it goes off into the worries of the past or the anxieties of the future. But what we want to do is kind of create banks around those thoughts and direct it towards something that's actually useful. And by just simply directing it, what we're doing is we're reducing it from going into all these other tangents. And so instead of silencing them, which is the ultimate goal, and we can get that through distilling thoughts, reducing their quantity, improving their quality, and then eventually there'll be so few that you can easily just, with practice, with time, you can get rid of those last final thoughts and then you can do meditation. Now, we won't talk about that second half of doing meditation. We'll only kind of focus on what to do with the dominant narrative that's usually running in your brain while you come on the mat. And if we step on the mat and we notice, oh my gosh, lately I've been thinking about this problem I'm trying to solve at work, but I just don't have the time to sit down and journal and write and do all of those things because my mind is so busy and I have so many things to do. What we're going to try and do today is to use this 7-step framework to try and use the asana practice as a fertile ground to actually think through those thoughts. So how do we actually do this? The first step is to actually come up with this goal for your practice. And now maybe it's I've been trying to just think of a video idea for me, or I've been trying to solve this problem at work. So I want you to get a scrap of paper or even a notebook and write down just 1 to 3 things that you've been thinking about constantly. This seems to be a problem you're trying to solve and life just feels too busy or you haven't had enough time to think about it. But what we're trying to do is we're setting a filter for the brain. So what it really means is that you're giving your brain a heads up to say, okay, you're going to filter for this, even though there's so much information that's entering every single moment. You're going to try and filter for this specific thing. And so whenever relevant thoughts or relevant phrases or anything comes up, then the brain is constantly sifting through all the information and it's already primed to look for what you've set that intention for. So it's easier. So when it pops up during the practice, your brain is already tuned in to begin to notice them. So that's what we want to do, is to first try and set an intention. Now, don't pick more than one thing because then you'll just end up trying to solve multiple problems or think through multiple ideas. Just pick one intentional idea or problem or something that you've been constantly thinking about. And it's about giving your mind a job instead of forcing it to sit down quietly. And I know we all struggle to sit down quietly and do nothing, which is why we're giving it a constructive job. And so just to take a moment now and write down a micro intention. So this can be just a phrase or a sentence. Do it right now. I'm going to wait and then we'll move on. Okay, this should be so easy for you because it should instantly come up because this is the thing you've been thinking about. Even as I was speaking, I'm sure you already had something in your mind. But what we want to do for step 2 is for about 3 to 6 hours before our practice, we want to immerse our minds in information relevant to the idea. So for this, what it actually means is that you go to YouTube, you go to like any blog article, news article, whatever you want, and just kind of, even if you're playing it on 2x speed, the idea is to kind of just immerse your brain in all the information that's relevant to this idea. And if you do this well, you're priming your subconscious mind to try and take in all the information that's relevant to the idea. And when you do this correctly, your brain is, again, it's tuning itself to selectively only think about this one thing. And when you feed the subconscious in this way, it's like you're giving raw clay, raw material, and it needs this raw clay, it needs this raw material so that it can sculpt a beautiful pot. So you can't just wish a pot into existence. You can't just say, think of this brilliant solution to this problem. You have to provide the right inputs and you have to learn about this. Now, I know a lot of us get stuck in this learning phase, so try not to get stuck in the learning phase, which is why I'm giving you a window of 90 minutes before your yoga session to really just focus and prioritize just information related to this idea for 90 minutes. And if you go over this, you know you'll end up just researching and not actually like doing the thing. So try and force yourself just to limit to 90 minutes before your practice. Feed your subconscious mind with as much information as you can that's relevant to the idea. Now, the next step, once you've done this, is to move in silence. Now, often when we go to a class or we practice in a group-led class, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of things that take us away from actually just allowing boredom and allowing silence to be. So this is what we need. This is kind of like the precondition for creative ideas to come out. And this one's really big for me because whenever I'm in someone else's class, I can't do this exercise. I have to be practicing like Mysore style on my own. Because what next happens is when you feed your subconscious mind and you're filtering for this specific intent and you come on the mat, the Ashtanga sequence has a built-in rhythm. At this point, hopefully, you should be practicing on your own without needing too much assistance or guidance. And so what we need to do is set the internal rhythm of the Ujjayi breath and just allow yourself to move through the practice. And your primary focus, your single intent, should just be to allow silence, to allow stillness to permeate between the poses. And this way, what you're doing is having all the information like kind of in the back of your mind, you're pulling the attention inwards rather than focusing outwards. So even if the form of your shapes today looks like wonky, you're not doing exactly, to the perfect extent that you normally do, just forgive yourself, because today what we want to do is put our brain in like a theta state. A theta state, as you might have heard, is a state that allows us to have like deep relaxation, a sense of calmness. And critically, what this allows us to do is create conditions for free association. So free association of thoughts is where thoughts kind of bundle up together and create like ideas or clusters into like a fully formed thought. Now, we're not yet going there. All we're doing is creating enough gaps and allowing ourselves to be bored so that it gives enough time and quietness for the brain to truly create. So step number 3 is just to create preconditions correctly, and that is to move in complete silence. Now, once you begin, you'll notice all the way maybe until standing sequence or maybe until some parts of the sitting sequence, you're still kind of just working with what you're struggling with in your body. Maybe there's stiffness, maybe there's irritation, like whatever you're dealing with, you're probably still just doing and moving through those. But in step number 4, when you begin to hold poses and you start moving with this intention of working with this single sankalpa that you made in the start, you're giving yourself like time for those ideas to sprout. So you've created a fertile soil, you've allowed yourself enough time to move through the practice. And we do this by holding poses for a little bit longer. So maybe usually you hold the poses for 5 breaths. Now I want you to hold the poses for 8 to 10 breaths even. And so you're planting the seed, you're allowing the seed to kind of take root. And instead of digging up and saying, oh, is this sprouted yet? Is it coming into is it like coming into my mind? Do I have an idea yet? Just be patient and don't like suggest the mind to come up with an answer. Allow it to come up on its own. In the first time you do this, it's going to feel awkward, it's going to feel funny, it's going to feel like this is just pointless, and expect that. But don't rush through the poses, or don't rush through the transitions, or don't focus on getting the poses right. Because what we want to do is just get into this deep stretch, allow the stretch to like reach your connective tissue. But also metaphorically, this 10 breaths or this longer time in each pose gives us this little pocket, this little like sense of spaciousness. And this is where, in that spaciousness, where ideas kind of pop into your head. It's like you're doing a pose, you're holding Shavasana, and you've created a container for the mind. And then out of nowhere, this only happens through experience. I cannot describe this to you, even if I tried. It's all that happens is that a small idea pops into your head. And now this spaciousness has allowed this idea to come. And now I want you to just hold the idea in your hand or in the asana. Don't try and already form it fully or do anything like that. All you're doing is allowing an idea to drop and you're receiving the idea. Now, what's happening underneath the surface is that everything that you've kind of inputted into your brain is slowly bubbling up to the surface and coming into your conscious awareness. And it's coming because your brain doesn't have anything to latch onto. It's not stimulated by someone else to your left, doing a full headstand or whatever. It's not moving too quickly. It's not distracted. And so instead of zoning out or being bored or thinking of other things, because you've kept your intention and you've kept your mind on those tracks, you've really given yourself just one thing to do, then what's now happening in this 4th step is that you've created a blank canvas. And on this blank canvas is, the perfect fertile ground for this inspiration to come up. And when you push through that initial boredom that you faced in the previous step, when you've overcome that sense of just, okay, I'm doing this and it's not really working, that's where the truly good stuff starts to happen. And this is where good ideas start to emerge. So don't fight it, just embrace it. And let it be like a signal for yourself that you're finally on the verge of a breakthrough. And if it doesn't happen in one practice, it doesn't happen. Just keep thinking about the idea. It'll happen maybe in Shavasana, when you're taking a shower afterwards. But the goal here is to use the asana to hold the shape long enough that your body is engaged in an activity, it's fully focused and it's contained, your mind is not distracted and going out into the sensory world, and your subconscious mind is finally having a chance to express into the conscious awareness. And that's all we need to do in step 4. But step 5, and this is the coolest part, is where you catch the thoughts. It's like you're going fishing and you've kind of put your bait on a hook and you've reeled, and then what you're doing now is you're slowly reeling the fish back into the boat. And this is where you're catching thoughts. So you've held the poses long enough, you've breathed through it, you're letting that mental space just open up. And now for step number 5, what we're going to do is try and catch the thoughts in a way that doesn't squish it or develop it too much. So previous step, you've noticed the thoughts that have come up into your conscious awareness. Now step number 5, instead of just allowing them to pass by like clouds, what you're going to do is place a notebook and pen before you even start, like I said, next to your mat. And now whatever comes up, I know it feels counter to everything that I've taught so far or a normal yoga class. But remember, we're using this particular practice as an aid for our creative process. So you're going to catch and capture that thought onto paper before it floats into your awareness and drifts away. So don't let it pass away like a cloud, whether it's a single phrase, a word, or this angle on a thing that you've been trying to solve. Just as soon as it pops up, write it down. And now I don't want you to be oh, I need to develop it and finish thinking about it. Go back to your mat, go back to the breaths, go back to perfecting your asana. Because the next thought will come, the next idea will come. It'll be related to the same thing that you're solving, but it won't be a continuation of the same exact thing. And so don't squeeze the idea until it dies. Just allow this process to unfold. And when you come back to the pose and you experience the pose fully, you're creating a break. Normally, when we're trying to just take a pen and paper and we're sitting down in front of a desk, we're not in that theta state of free association that's priming our brains enough to actually create different thought clusters. So when I say catching thoughts, I don't mean like just try and find a thought and then like cook the meal and eat the fish and like be happy with your family. I'm not saying do the whole thing. All I'm saying is get the fish onto the boat. Catch the thought and write it down onto paper. Then catch the next thought and write it down onto paper. And so when you think of this as like an interruption, or you think, oh my gosh, I'm going off my mat, I'm doing something else, keep your 𝐸𝐸 breath in the background. And it shouldn't take you too long. It should just be like 1 or 2 words, like scribbles. You're just noticing, you're capturing, and then you're returning to your mat. And while you leave the mat or you're bending down to write, continue to keep stronger, louder 𝐸𝐸 breaths. So it's a reminder to yourself not to like eat the whole meal, but to just rather like capture, leave it there, shelve it, and then get back to the mat. And that is a really crucial step in this process. And I know some of us might struggle with this because it's so tempting to like think about the thought and like, oh no, I found something and now let me digest it fully. So don't do that. Teach your mind that the practice is more important, and what you're doing is using the practice as a way to just let this kind of free association happen. Yeah, so that was step number 5. We've captured the thoughts now. And now step number 6 is to tie the bundle. And this is where we're taking it home and we're giving it to like our mom or sister or whoever to cook it and have like a nice meal with our family. So you've made it through the active part of your practice. You've probably finished, all this Navasana and all Bhujapirasana and all these like hard positions. And now when you're in Shavasana, when you're lying down flat, this is where you're going to learn how to tie up the bundle. And this is where all the pieces come together. So just before you lie down, maybe you're going to have like a blanket on you and an eye pillow. Just go back over that list of thoughts that you've written down and let only these thoughts, only these like things that you've caught be in your awareness, and then lie down in Shavasana. Now, eyes closed, set a timer for 15 minutes. This should take you at least 15 minutes if you do this right, because you want to give yourself enough time to be bored, to allow like, grumpiness, like readjustment of clothing, hair, whatever else to not get in the way of you just having nothing else to do and no sensory like, stimulation in that moment. And so think of each idea. Now, you're going to bring up the idea 1. You're going to give it color, give it texture, give it context, and just animate it in your mind's eye, so to speak. And then you're going to do that for every single idea. Now, once you do this, you've done that for individual ideas, you've kind of given it some more time to think it through. You're now going to lay it on a ladder. And sometimes I like to use this ladder metaphor because it's easy to kind of get a coherent kind of like sequence to those thoughts. Sometimes I think of it like a braid where I'm threading multiple thoughts together. Sometimes I think of it like creating a mind map for myself where it's like, okay, this idea and then this idea and then, so whatever. Visually, you want to select one frame that then organizes these different ideas in your mind's eye.